Everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Today we've got another laser on the bench. This time it is the ACMER P1. This is a 10-watt diode laser that is intriguing because it has a few things on it that I feel some of the lasers on the market today have been lacking. So we're going to go over some of those features, what I like about it, if I find anything that I find concerning, and at the end I'll just kind of give you my overview. So if that's something you're interested in finding out, hang on, we're going to get right into it. All right, let's talk real briefly about the specs of this laser. This is a 10-watt optical output laser, and it has a working area of about 400 by 410 millimeters, otherwise 15.7 by 16.1 inches. And they claim it has a focal point of 0.06 millimeters square. As far as its cutting ability, they claim that it can cut 20 millimeter softwood, 10 millimeter plywood, and 5 millimeter acrylic, and that its top engraving speed is 10,000 millimeters per minute. Right, some of the features on this laser are that it does have a fairly robust frame. The main rails are made of 20 by 40 aluminum extrusion, as well as the front and back panels being out of some steel that is formed, as well as looks like it is probably water jet or plasma cut out with their logo. It makes for a very rigid frame. They also, on their gantry, have 4 wheels instead of just your 3, and 2 of those have eccentric nuts for adjusting. Now, if you're a woodworker, you know that 3 legs versus 4 are easier to stabilize, but 4 will give you more overall stability. So you do need to tune those up and get those tight, but once you do, there's less chance of it actually being able to rack around. I do really like that they include cable chain for cable management. This makes it so much easier to keep your cables out of the way, keep them tucked along, and keep them from binding and twisting. So I think this is something that more laser manufacturers really should be including on theirs. It does take up a little extra space on the top, on the side, but it keeps those cables from sliding around and getting in your way. It does also include an air assist nozzle. It does not include the pump. That is an add-on, so you can use your own air source if you have it, but the nozzle and the adapter do come with the laser itself. It does have a plastic safety shroud around the bottom. Some people choose to take that off for various functions. It is held on by magnets, which is kind of nice that it's not going to jam up as much. It's a little bit easier to remove, although you do need to take the air assist adapter off as well. As far as other safety features, it does have an e-stop button. Again, I think that is something that all lasers should have on there. It is there to cut the power to the controller, cut the power to the laser and the motors all at once. It will mean that you cannot necessarily restart your job in the same spot, but if you're having a problem, it's going to shut things down, at least stop them from getting worse. They also have this key lockout option, so you can turn the key and remove that, and then it will prevent the machine from being powered on. The module is kind of hidden in here, and I do like that the cables are off to the side instead of sticking out top or the front. It just gets them out of the way and helps keep things clean, gives easy access to these buttons on top. I really like that design. Now behind here, which you can't see, but I'll show you another close-up, is the Wi-Fi adapter. I'm not sure, being surrounded half by metal, if that's the best, but it's nice that they include that on there if that is something you want to take advantage of. As far as focusing, they do have the nice kickstand option. You flip that down and then you adjust that to the top of your material, and then you flip it back up and a magnet holds it up in place. I really like seeing these. They're not a block that you have to put or a spacer. It's attached to the laser. You can't lose it. And as far as focusing, you also have this lead screw adjustment with the knurled knob on top that allows you to easily make adjustments up and down without having to screw and unscrew and slide things around. It's just a simple twist and dial it in from there. So far, in just assembling it, it seems to hold pretty well. However, my one concern here is that the cables coming around here, they do get pretty tight if you have to drop that down pretty low. So just keep that in mind, that you may need to tweak your cable management, make sure you've got plenty of strain relief on these and that are not getting pulled too tight. All right, so ACMER was kind enough to send along some material for testing, and so what we have here is a little, it looks like an anodized dog tag type thing, so we'll be able to see about engraving that. Interestingly enough, it is a 9.6, almost 10 millimeter chunk of acrylic, and so even though their specs say 6 millimeter acrylic, we're going to see how it cuts on this 10 millimeter stuff. And then we have some 6 millimeter plywood, and then a number of sheets of 4 millimeter plywood. I'll also be throwing in some of my own material. We'll be looking at a few different hardwoods around 1/4 inch, maybe even up to a 1/2 inch. And then also I have my standby, which is 3mm Baltic birch plywood. So we'll throw some of this through the laser and maybe a couple other materials, and we'll show you the results along the ways. Now, as we're running this test, it does have the shroud around the nozzle. We have it in the enclosure, and they do also include a set of glasses that help protect you as well. Now, my one complaint with all laser manufacturers for these diodes is they include these glasses, but they're really just tinted acrylic as far as I can tell. And so I really recommend you go the extra step. Get yourself a pair of laser safety glasses that are actually rated and tested for these. I'll have a link to these down below. These are from Free Mascot, and they are rated for 190 to 550 nanometers, as well as 800 to 1100 nanometers, and an OD of 6+. That's the optical density. And for these lasers, you're really looking for something in that 4+ range. So this is a set that actually will fit over my regular prescription glasses and provide extra protection. They have a few different styles as well. Definitely worth the small investment on top of your laser. Get a quality pair of glasses. So now, with all that out of the way, let's jump in and get to testing this. All right, we completed both the cut and the engrave test, so let's pull this out and see how it looks. So I just pulled it right up, and you'll notice a lot of these blocks are cut out. And if I tap these gently, some of these other ones will fall. Usually they're just kind of stuck in by a little bit. There we go. So as you see, we've got most of them there, and this oddball right here is just a little, see here on the back, you can see there's just a little tab. You're gonna have that with any material. You'll have just some inconsistencies. So I'm gonna count that one as just a push out. So there you see, actually performing fairly well. We got up to 275 at 90 and 100% power. So I would probably call that the upper limit. But 275 on this 4mm wood is actually pretty good. With a 10 watt, I was really surprised that 250 was going to go through. And then over on the side here, we can see our engraving grid. And again, I'm a little surprised how dark this is even at 6,000. So I was skeptical about their 10,000. I'm probably actually going to run it again a little bit higher just to see where this really drops off. We're probably not going to go much faster than this, but we might go a little bit faster and still see some quality from dark to light. So I'm going to pop this back in there. I'm going to redo this with just a few more rows in higher ranges, and we'll see where that ends up. All right, so here we've added the 7,000 through 10,000. And at that power, it's getting hard to differentiate. There's just a little bit lighter up here at 10,000, but quite honestly, that is still fairly effective. And so I'd be curious to see on some of our engravings if it's really running at 10,000 millimeters a minute and giving us that kind of nice variety in shading. That's pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with that. So let's move on to testing some of the other materials, the thicker materials, see how we can get by with cutting those. All right, so we're going to start with this 6mm plywood that they provided. This is actually pretty good plies. It looks like there's 5 main cores and 2 veneers, so that's 7-layer plywood. And it feels not the lightest, but not super heavy. So, you know, it's probably some very softwood layers in the middle there, but like a top layer of, looks like maybe birch or something. So I'm gonna set this in here. We'll run a single pass cut test. I'm guessing we may end up running a 2-pass cut test as well, but let's just see where it goes and see how this machine does. All right, the test on the 6mm plywood finished, so let's pull this out and see what we've got. They're mostly sticking in there, but some of these top ones are they will fall out. They just need to be pushed through. So as I thought, the single pass is kind of limiting, but it looks like we do have a few that are going to pop free here. Okay, so I went ahead and kind of poked them out, and as you can see there, at the 100% power, it was actually cutting through most of the way. I mean, there were little nibs on the 175, 150. And I think there's two things we can do to improve this without, really modifying it. Number one, what we can do is we can set the focus down actually to where it's going to be more in the middle of it. So if we focus it on, say, a 3mm piece of wood, so that the fine point of the focus is in the middle of the wood, that should help improve it. And the other thing we can do is we'll actually add some passes to this. So if you double the speed and double the passes, it's going to have a similar effect of the same power, but sometimes that extra pass through it will help. And also, it not sitting in one spot, sintering on the material, can make for a cleaner cut. So I want to try that, and we'll run this again and see how it works. All right, a new file finished, and let's check it out. I did run it from 150 on up to 300mm a minute with 2 passes, but as you see, as I lift this out, they almost all fall out. This one little stickler is stuck in there. That one's coming out, and it looks like this one should come out as well, and maybe even this one. Yeah, so almost all of these this time have come out. And so that didn't take a lot longer, and as a matter of fact, I have more steps. Doubling your speed and doubling your passes can actually result in the same actual time, but you get better cut quality out of it. Now, at this 100% power 150, we're actually burning too hot, because you can see on the back there, you get a little bit of burning, but very good grid. So according to this, we could actually go up a little bit faster. We could probably bump this up to 350, maybe 400 with 2 passes, and be able to cut through this material even quicker and have clean cuts. So very impressive. It can deal with this 6mm material very well. All right, so what I'm going to try next is this chunk of black acrylic they gave. Now I measured this out at 9.6mm. And in their documentation online, they say it can cut acrylic up to 6mm. So curious about this being thicker. And they only, on their website, give material recommendations for 2 and 4mm thick materials. So based off that, I'm going to set this up to cut. I'm probably going to need to make it at 150mm a minute, 100 to 150mm a minute. And I'm guessing we're going to need to, get the focus as deep as we can, and probably do maybe 4 passes. But we'll set this up, we'll give it a shot and see how it does. All right, that was 4 passes, and can't really see anything on the way through. It may have sintered it. Let's see if we can peel this back. So I don't know if you can see that. It almost wanted to come through. So let's change that up just a little bit. We'll try one more cut. All right, I've got it set up now at 125mm a minute, but 6 passes, basically the same focus, and we're gonna run it again with full air. All right, so there you go. It did cut through this. It was 125 millimeters a minute at 6 passes. It took about 3.5 minutes to cut this 1-inch circle from here. And while it is a fairly clean cut, you can definitely see some layers to this. So you'll see that there's definitely some lines from each layer of the cut. So depending on what you're using this for, yes, it's possible, but it's not exactly fast. It's going to take quite a few passes to get through it. So if you're trying to just cut one single hole in something like this, sure, maybe. But if you're cutting something very large, it's going to take a while. All right, so there are many different materials you can work with on these diode lasers, and one of my favorites is to play around with slate tile for coasters. So we're going to run a test grid on here and then see if we can get some sort of image or graphic one after we have our test grid to find out what our settings need to be. So let's do that first. All right, so here we go. That's how this one turned out, nice and crisp. The lines are very clean. There's decent contrast on here. You could actually spray the tile either before or after with some finish to add even more contrast to this if you felt so inclined. Some people like the more natural look, some people like the higher contrast, but it does make it look a little more wet instead of a dry tile. So definitely something to play with the slate tiles, and the ACMER P1 does it quite well. Oh, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for initial testing on this ACMER P1. Some of the strong points, I think it cuts really strongly for a 10 watt. It seems to be performing better than many of the other 10 watts I've tested in the past. So, you know, bonus points for that if you're looking to get into a laser and are kind of stuck at that 10 watt price point. This is probably a good one to look at. I was also impressed with the quality of the engraving at higher speeds. I was pushing up to about 9,000 millimeters a minute, and normally with the 10 watts, I'm down closer to 6,000 just to get the quality and the range of colors in there. So another plus in the column there. I also really like their focusing setup. Both they integrate the little side kickstand, so your focusing tool is always at hand, as well as the screw adjustment on top. It's one-handed, easily adjustment. And so it's great to see that as well. Another huge thing is the cable chain that controls and provides excellent cable management. I really would love to see this be more of a standard on these diode lasers. So I hope that was some good information. And if you are looking at this or any 10 watt diode laser, I hope that my information has been helpful for you. And if you have any questions or comments about it, go ahead and leave those down below. I will try to get back to them in a timely manner. If you're interested in this laser, I will have links down below to it and possibly any deals that are available at this time. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check them out. I'll also have links to some of the other items used in this video that I find useful. Some of them will be affiliate links, and those do provide a kickback to me, but no additional cost to you. If you'd like to learn more about using diode lasers in general and stuff in the workshop, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, but also check out on Sunday nights, I do a live stream with David from the Clack Shack. We do it at 7 p.m. Central. We answer a lot of questions about lasers. We talk about new products. We talk about new projects we're doing in our shop. And we answer things live from the audience and just have a good time. Anyway, that's it. I thank you again for stopping by. I hope you appreciated this review video. I will have more project videos and more informational videos coming out soon. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, I hope you can get out in your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.